everybody, how you doing today? I am Eric Anderson. This is the Bass and Triad channel where we do everything we can to talk about the system we call music in a very simplistic way, because we just focus on 7 notes. That's it, because virtually every song that we listen to is really nothing more than a creative use of a collection of 7 notes that are used in various ways to put together the vast majority of the songs that we listen to. So today, what I want to do, I'm going to launch right into this. What I want to do today is I want to try to summarize what we've covered over the last few videos. And the reason why is because I just kind of want to make sure that we got all the ideas kind of consolidated both in one video and in our minds as we continue to go forward. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the most fundamental, the basic building block, which is the scale, which all of our songs come from these scales, and each one of these scales represents what's known as the key signature, right? These 7 notes, if you understand how these 7 notes, which are the scales and which are the key signatures, and you understand how they work, the moment you understand how any set of 7 notes works, it's just like having a fleet of trucks that you have 15 trucks and they're all function the exact same way, except that the colors are different. Once you understand how to drive one of the trucks, you can instantaneously drive the other ones in the exact same fashion. So that's the scales and key signatures aspect. And then from there, we're going to spend some time talking about the triads themselves, kind of reviewing what we covered first, going with the perfect fifth, and then finally getting into the triads themselves. So when it comes down to the scales, and we kind of hit this a bit last week as well as in previous videos, each scale is nothing more than a tonal sequence or an interval pattern of what I call half steps and whole steps. So if you listen to any scale that's played, where, and it's just a major scale, where the root note is, the root note of the scale or the first note of the scale is also the name of the key signature, they're going to follow the same pattern, tonal pattern of whole steps and half steps. And it's going to sound as follows, right? You're going to get this from 1 to 2 is a whole step, and then from 2 to 3 is a whole step, and then from 3 to 4 is a half step, 4 to 5 is a whole step, and then 5, 6, whole step, 6, 7, whole step, and then finally 7 to the new one, or the 7 to the octave, is a half step. So again, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. That is the scale. That's the tonal pattern that every major scale is going to follow. So even if you don't know the exact name of the notes, if your ear can pick out that tonal pattern and you're able to figure out where those notes are at on your instrument just by ear and listening to that same pattern right there, listening for that combination of whole steps and half steps, you can put together the major scale from starting at any note on your instrument. Okay, so once you got that working, then the next thing we're going to take a look at is the triads. And as we talked about before, right, the triads are nothing more, and I got to do it like this so I can kind of give you a good visual representation. They're 3 notes from that set of 7 that we just covered. And what they are exactly is just that, let's say that you start from the first note of the scale. So you start on the first note, you're going to skip over the second note, play the third note, skip the fourth note, and play the fifth note. And all of your triads are set up like that. So if you were to start from the fourth note of the scale, then it would be note number 4, skip 5, note 6 is the middle, skip 7. Note number 1, which would be the octave above, would be the top note of the triad. And if you were to start from the 2, just one more example, note number 2 is the root, skip 3, note 4 is the middle, skip 5, note 6 is the top note of the triad. So this is important because when I take out that middle note and you got from the first note of the triad, from the root note of the triad to the top note of the triad, you usually have what's known as a perfect fifth. And what a perfect fifth does is that it helps you to quickly pick out the name of the chord, but not necessarily the characteristic of the chord. So you might be able to say that it's a chord that's built on the first note of the scale or the third note of the scale, but at this point with just the perfect fifth, you can't say whether it's a major scale or, major chord, which is a happy chord, or a minor chord, which is a sad chord. And there is one fifth in there that I call the ugly fifth, and it's also known as the not the diminished, but the devil's interval, and it's built from the 7th note, right? So from the 7th note, you get 7, 1, 2, 3, 4. So from the 7th note of the scale to the 4th note of the scale, it's not quite a perfect fifth, and it's got this very nasty sound to it. So like if we were to take a look, here's your perfect fifth. Now I'm going to slide over, and now I'm going to wind up playing this devil's interval. So here it comes. And then I'm going to slide down to the next perfect fifth, which is built from the 6th note. Here we go. And then to the devil's interval. And then finally, the perfect fifth built from the 1. So that devil's interval, or the ugly, what I call the ugly fifth, and it's also known as a tritone, that's only built from the 7th note of the scale. And I remember mentioning before, the Catholic Church had said that it didn't want their songwriters way back in the day to use that tritone or that ugly fifth or the devil's interval because it had such a nasty sound. They didn't think that it belonged in music that was oriented towards God. But there's people like Johann Sebastian Bach. I don't think he got that memo, and he would use it from time to time. And I am of the mindset that everything we have available to us in music, you should be able to use, but the real art of writing a song and the real art of playing a song is not using everything that's available, but using what is available in such a way that it best serves the song and makes the song better. So there is a time and a place for the ugly interval or for the tritone or the devil's interval, but I wouldn't rely on it too heavily because then it can actually, it'll drive people away because it's just got an ugly sound to it. So if we understand the idea that, the fifth names the chord, but it doesn't completely tell us the rest that we need to know about the chord, that's where the triad comes in, the middle note of the triad comes in. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to break this down and give you some helpful hints that I think will make a world of difference for you. When you're building a triad from the first note of the scale, the 4th note of the scale, and the 5th note of the scale, when you build a triad from any of those 3 notes, you actually get a major triad, which is also known as the happy triad, because it's just got a nice happy kind of vibe to it. And I remember in previous videos, like the song by Katrina and the Waves, Walking on Sunshine, is just nothing but just 3 happy chords, the 1, 4, 5. Chords that are built from the 1st note, the 4th note, and the 5th note of the scale. La Bamba is another one of those that's built from the 1st note, the 4th note, and the 5th note of the scale. They're all happy triads, and that's why they sound like happy songs. Now, minor triads are those songs that are built, those triads that are built from the 2nd note of the scale, the 3rd note of the scale, and the 6th note of the scale. Those triads in particular have a much more minor kind of feel to them. And let me kind of try to summarize everything as well as I can. So with your major triads, what you have is from the root note to the middle note, you have 2 whole steps or a major third apart. And then from the middle note to the top note, you have a step and a half or a minor third apart. And then from the, when you're dealing with your minor triads, then from the root note of the triad to the middle note of the triad is a step and a half or a minor third apart. And then from the middle to the top is 2 steps apart or a major third apart. So minor third to major third is a minor triad. And then finally you got the diminished chord, which sounds really ugly because from the first note of from the root note of the diminished triad to the middle note is a step and a half, and from the middle note to the top note is also a step and a half. So that's why you get that really ugly sound. Now, if you're not certain of what I mean by major thirds, minor thirds, step and a half and 2 steps in between the root note and the middle and the top, do me a favor and go back to the previous video, because I used a piano in that one to really help you visualize what these triads look like. Because here's the challenge of the music theory scene and how this system works. We're trying to use words to paint a visual picture in your mind of something you cannot see, because you cannot see a sound. And that's always been the challenge. And then there's the additional challenge of we use 2, 3, maybe 4 different words or phrases to describe the exact same thing in music. So that just complicates it all that much more. So, but back to this idea of helping you visualize and why it's such a challenge. Imagine, if you will, the color of these strings. Now, imagine what it would be like if you have to describe the color of these strings to a person who's never seen a color in his or her life. All of a sudden it becomes a whole new challenge, because how do you get them to understand something they cannot see? Well, that's the same thing here. We can hear it, the music, but we can't see the music theory behind it. So last week's video is a great opportunity to actually visualize and hear exactly how major thirds and how minor thirds work together to form the triads, both the major triads and the minor triads. Last week's video will break down the difference between a step and a half and 2 steps or 2 whole steps. That's very important if you want to understand this stuff, because, well, this is the world of music theory, and I'm doing the best that I can to help you understand this without overwhelming you with all the additional words and phrases that just seem to, well, honestly piss people off. So we've hit the end of this, and I'm feeling pretty good about what I'm doing so far. But me and Trevor, we've been going back and forth, and we kind of want you to help us out with this. What I would like to do is I would like to keep going with this idea of these chords by breaking down some common formats that are used in a lot of songs. The different, what we call chord progressions, and all these chord progressions, these common formats are used in a lot of the music that you listen to today. Now, on the other side of the coin, and Trevor's got a point in here too. See, we're looking at this fashionable drum set right here, which is kind of Trevor's domain, and he thinks that we should be talking about rhythm, and he's got a point. And here's why: because all this chords and triads and scales and things like that is nice, but I gotta admit, no song survives without rhythm. Without some kind of a rhythm in the melody or in the harmony section, like strings, or from just a rhythm instrument like the drums or something like that, if you don't have rhythm, you got nothing, because you've got nothing for people to hear. So there's a lot of legitimacy to the point that he brings up, and I know that one thing that he's going to be kind of pressing me on too is that if we're going to get into rhythm, we really need to help everybody understand exactly what the time signature means, because that's really been like a real baffling thing, and yet it's fundamental to rhythm. It's like that's that interconnect that just helps you put your rhythms together better, because you understand what you're working with and how it's supposed to work together. So my question for you today is this: which way would you prefer that we go? Should we delve into the rhythm side of music, which is hugely important, or should we go towards common chord progressions that are used in music over the past 70 or 80 years? You know, the stuff that we're listening to today and stuff that we've listened to that's come out in like the past 80 years or so. Because believe me, there are some very common chord progressions that have been used and still get used today. So which way should we go? Do me a favor, give me put your thoughts down below. Answer the question down below. And man, you could say chord progressions, or you could say rhythm. You know, it could be something as simple as that. Just let me know which way we should go. So with that being said, my friends, that's it. We talked about scales. We talked about the perfect fifth. We talked about triads and how they're constructed. But this is very much an overview or a summary of what's already been covered. So if you got any questions, if you're not sure of a phrase that was used here, please go back, follow the tags that are up there, or the whatever they call those doodads up there. Definitely go back and take a look at the previous videos, because they go much deeper into specific aspects that we covered here today. So that's really it, my friends. I am Eric Anderson. This is the Bass and Triad channel, where we talk about music, the system known as music theory, and we just talk about it in the context of 7 notes. That's it. So that, my friends, is my rumor. I'm sticking to it. I'm getting out of here, and I'll see you on the next video. All right? Bye-bye.